Hello and welcome to What Culture Horror with myself, Andrew Pollard. I hope you're good, I hope you're well, and I hope your week is going as well as it possibly can. We are back today with another review, and this time it's the hotly anticipated new I Know What You Did Last Summer. First new movie entry in the franchise since 2006's I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, a first new anything for the IP since 2021's short-lived Amazon TV series. So, is this one that's worth the wait for those of us old enough to be around for those first films? Or is this something to rival the truly awful I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer? Let's find out. Now, I have a fun relationship with the Last Summer franchise, the 1997 original. I'm a big fan, with that being one of those films that nicely followed in the footsteps of Wes Craven's original Scream, playing somewhat of a role in helping to give horror a fresh shot in the arm, rejuvenate the genre. 1998, I still know what you did last summer. I know a lot of people like to dump on that sequel, but I enjoy it a lot more than the masses. Yes, a lot of it is just ridiculous, with the action switching to the Bahamas, but hey, sometimes all you need is a daft, dumb popcorn slasher movie to take up 90 minutes of your day, and this, I mean, that sequel very much fits that bill, plus bonus points for Jeffrey Combs, of course. Then there's 2006's I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, which just absolutely sucks, man. I'll always have some leeway for any film whatsoever that's managed to get itself made. I'll always try to look for at least a few mild positives. I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, though, just horrendous. It sucks on every possible level. Literally, my go-to answer, genuinely, when someone asks me, what is the worst film you've ever seen? My go-to answer is, I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer. I just hate that movie. I have seen worse films when it comes to certain zero-budget independent films, but again, I'll always give them a bit of a pass, some leeway. But I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, screw that movie. Still, as someone whose first real dabble into horror came in the 90s, I was intrigued when a new I Know What You Did Last Summer was announced, particularly with this being a legacy sequel, much like 2022 Scream, in how it was introducing a bunch of new characters to take the franchise forward, while also bringing in a few familiar faces to help steer the ship. Still, also like 2022 Scream, there is the mildly annoying, slightly confusing decision to call this new film I Know What You Did Last Summer, the exact same title of the 1997 original. But anyways, in terms of where we are in the franchise here, the 2025 film, directed by The Revenge's Jennifer Kaytin Robinson, co-written as well with Sam Lansky, it is very much a sequel to the original film, and it does make a few nods and winks to the 1998 sequel as well, but thankfully it totally ignores I'll Always Know What You Did Last Summer, which is something we should all do. Trash movie, absolute the worst. But then, that third film did take place in a totally different setting with a totally different cast, and just the undead supernatural Ben Willis as the only ties to the previous films. Oh, awful film. Anyway, so yeah, this new movie follows on from the first two, with the town of Southport, North Carolina, once again are set in here. The sleepy fishing town that was tormented by the slicker-wearing Ben Willis in the first movie. The thing is, this is a slightly different Southport, for the town has done its best to just completely forget the 1997 murders ever happened, to the point that those murders are the stuff of infamy, of legend, the sort of events that are whispered about in podcast circles and the like, regardless of how much the town's officials have tried their best to erase those events from history completely. Of course, it's no spoiler because it's in all the trailers, and yeah, it's what you'd expect from the movie, but we do indeed open things up with a bunch of young adults partying, always with the partying, celebrating the engagement of two of the group, that'd be Danica and Teddy, and also celebrating the 4th of July, and wouldn't you know it, but their partying ends up with a random stranger's car coming off the road, off a cliff, and plunging that person to their death in the ocean below, with the group left with the dilemma of, you've caused someone's death, but with their futures in mind, they eventually decide to never speak of this again, even if Ava, part of the group, is particularly against the idea, and she wants to report the incident to the police. But Teddy, you see, Teddy's dad is a powerful man, a man who has the sway in town to cover this whole thing up. And that is exactly what happens with just our core group and Teddy's old man. They're the only people in the know. And then we fast forward 1 year later, of course. Here we see some of the fallout of what happened a year ago. Namely, Teddy and Danica have split up, Teddy becoming a reclusive alcoholic, Danica now celebrating another engagement, this time to a fella called Wyatt. Ava's spent a year away from Southport, where she spiraled into her own angsty path as she struggles to deal with what happened. And then there's Milo, Ava's ex, who's trying to maintain somewhat of a balance to things. And also we have Stevie, the recovering addict of the group, who's really come through during this time for Danica and to help her kind of get herself straight. And then, of course, there is true crime podcaster Tyler Trevino, who's arrived in town just in time to delve into the 1997 murders. But more importantly, Danica's latest engagement party that is interrupted by an ominous note. Yep, you know the one. A note that simply says, I know what you did last summer. And before you know it, the town is once again tormented by a killer wearing a fisherman's slicker. Is Ben Willis back to cause chaos and carnage? Is someone else following in Ben's footsteps? That's what we're here to find out, as I Know What You Did Last Summer nicely plays out the classic whodunit. To put it out there, though, I very much am, I guess, the demographic for a film like this, and I very much have a whole lot of time for daft, brisk popcorn slashes where you can just leave your brain at the door, and that is largely the case here. There are certain deeper elements to I Know What You Did Last Summer, such as the lasting effect of tragedy that tragedy has on a town, the trauma that comes with that, and how different people respond to these situations in different ways. But at the end of the day, it's a movie about a fisherman butchering people and the subsequent mystery of who this fisherman is, why they decided to wait until now to strike, and of course, the motive behind all of this. If you get a kick out of the original 1997 movie, you'll likely get a fair old kick out of this one too. If not, chances are you won't find too much here for yourself. But for me, I dug it, even if things do taper off a little in the final third, particularly when compared to the gnarly, inventive, brutal deaths that you see earlier in the film. And on that front, the first death of this new fisherman's murder spree, it is a belter, and it's set up so well, plays out even better. But to say any more would be to say too much. But yeah, that's one of my favourite kills of the year so far. I also really enjoyed the score from Chanda Dancy, particularly with how there's a properly ominous feel to whenever the fisherman rocks up. The sort of score that almost makes you wince in those moments, booming, intense, unrelenting, all as some brutality nicely plays out on the screen. Now, there are some moments here that, I'll say it, are extremely cheesy, but the film feels in on the joke here, deliberately cheesy, as otherwise those moments could come off as just pretty awful. But no, again, if you're a fan of the existing movies, those cheesy moments should land well with you, and you'll get a kick out of a few fun callbacks and Easter eggs, should we say, tying back to that original film, and even a few to that first sequel, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Granted, there are a few things here that don't really make all that much sense if you stop to properly think about them, but call me a simpleton, for I'm all good with most of that stuff. Again, I'm going into I Know What You Did Last Summer with an open mind, with optimism, with a can of beer that ridiculously cost me £7. Seriously, Odeon, what's going on? And being a major slasher movie fan who's happy to embrace some of the daftness and logic gaps that so often come with this subgenre. But away from that cheese, I Know What You Did Last Summer does make some extremely bold, dare I say, and fresh choices across its runtime. And there are certain risks taken with how the story plays out, how the narrative develops. Again, no spoilers here, but I did see a certain plot development coming a million miles away. But maybe that's the grizzled, worn down, cynical horror nerd in me. It probably is. It's also nice to see how I Know What You Did Last Summer plays with its core group of characters, setting them up as, I guess, incredibly formulaic would be the best way to describe them. Pretty much carbon copies of the group at the center of the original film, only for those characters and their dynamics to switch and play around as the film rolls on. I mean, I'm not saying this is a revolutionary concept, a revolutionary movie, but it's all nicely handled by all involved. And speaking of all involved, in terms of the cast, it is somewhat of a mixed bag. I mean, pretty much every core character is really, really unlikable at some points. Though I did enjoy particularly Tariq Withers' performance as Teddy. He's like the drunk jock who, pushed for the initial cover-up and who now finds himself a lonely drunk who lives on a boat, wanting nothing to do with the things once that first ominous I Know What You Did Last Summer note turns up. It's slightly Madeline Klein, though, as Danica, who steals the show here, with her character initially very much in the same mold as Sarah Michelle Gellar's Helen Shivers from the first film, just with a few more things at play here. Likewise, Chase Sue Wonders as Ava certainly has moments where she delivers big, with Ava similarly molded very much after Julie James. And speaking of which, Jennifer Love Hewitt is back as Julie, who these days lives away from Southport and works as a college professor. And we also have Freddie Prinze Jr.'s Ray Bronson back, still in Southport, now running his own bar and coming to the fore to rally the town when this new killing spree commences. It's fair to say both characters are very much supporting characters here, with the bulk of the action allowing the new cast and new characters to take center stage, particularly with Julie, who is very much a fleeting presence, though does still have a key part to play in all of this. For Ray, he's featured a little more, has a little more to do, which makes sense with, he's the one who is still living in Southport. And for Jennifer Love Hewitt and Freddie Prinze Jr., it was just great to see them back, both delivering pitch perfect performances for what was needed for these characters at this point in their respective lives, and both looking great, aging like fine wine as they return to roles that they've not played since 1998. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, which is crazy to think that's 27 years ago. I'll also say, and this is spoiler free, But if you head into the theatre to see I Know What You Did Last Summer, absolutely make sure you stick around for a mid-credit scene. I will give no more details other than that, and also that I will just say that Jennifer Love Hewitt herself has been very vocal about making sure people know to stick around. As she put it here, there's a quote. It could be a popcorn moment, it could be a death, or it could be just something really fun, but don't miss it. And I absolutely agree. So yes, you've been warned. Stick around for a few minutes. Literally, I think it's maybe 2 minutes into the end credits, if that. Though that said, at my screening on opening day here in Little Old Wrexham, only about 5 people stuck around to see that scene in question. What are you doing? So right, let's get to it. How about a rating then for I Know What You Did Last Summer 2025? To reiterate, I love me some 90s horror. My favourite type of horror subgenre is the slasher subgenre, and I have a whole lot of time for the first 2 last summer movies. So again, I am kind of the demographic for this one. I am the target audience. And with that in mind, I'm going to go with, it's a 6 out of 10 for me, a 3 out of 5. When it works, it really works. When it doesn't, yeah, it can feel a smidge wonky at times. The positives are those early kills, that booming score, some cracking chase sequences, and some nice nods of nostalgia for franchise fans. Not to mention easily the most vicious, violent killer of the series so far. Some of the characters may feel a little underserved, being killed off before we ever really got to know them, but I mean, yeah, okay, there's no emotional investment in some of those kills, but that's always par for the course for a film of this ilk. But the characters who do stick around, you genuinely end up rooting for them, particularly in the changes of dynamic that are at play. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with I Know What You Did Last Summer. Hopefully you do too. And if you've already checked the film out, as always, let us know in the comments what you thought. And please try and be aware of giving out any spoilers. Be kind, be nice, be considerate of your fellow horror fans. And if you're planning to pop along to watch the movie at some point, let us know what you're looking forward to seeing. And while you're at it, let us know your thoughts on the previous 3 movies, that awful third film, and even chime in on that short-lived TV series if you want. And with that, this has been What Culture Horror. I've been Andrew Pollard. I Know What You Did Last Summer is in theaters now. It's crazy to say that there's an I Know What You Did Last Summer movie in 2025 that's got a theatrical release and is actually pretty good. What a time to be alive. But yes, be well, stay safe, and I will catch you down the line.